Greetings from the Catholic Parish of Bundaberg, trusting you are safe and in good spirits. And today we continue getting to know the people of our parish just that little bit better, a bit of fun and a little bit of information. Today we have Judith and Lorenzo Erle, and people will know them from St. James Parish in Bagara, St. James Church in Bagara, and also when there's a bit of Italian singing going on here at Holy Rosary, we have you as well. It's great to have you. So, buongiorno.
Buongiorno.
Buongiorno, Peter. Thank you.
Great to have you. Now, you have chosen a beautiful gospel. Would you like to proclaim that for us, please, Judy?
Yes, I'm reading the Gospel of Luke, and it's when Mary visits, the visitation from Mary to Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. In those days, Mary arose and went with haste into the hill country to a city of Judah. And she entered the house of Zechariah and greeted Elizabeth. And when Elizabeth heard the greeting of Mary, the babe leapt in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit, and she exclaimed with a loud cry, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb. And why is this granted me, that the mother of my Lord should come to me? For behold, when the voice of your greeting came to my ears, the babe in my womb leapt for joy. And blessed is she who believed that there would be a fulfillment of what was spoken to her from the Lord." And Mary said, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Saviour, for he has regarded the low estate of his handmaiden. For behold, henceforth all generations will call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. And his mercy is on those who fear him, from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the imagination of their hearts. He has put down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of low degree. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent empty away. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, as he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham, and to his posterity forever." And Mary remained with Elizabeth for about 3 months and returned to her home.
Thanks, Judy. An incredible story of great faith from Mary and Elizabeth, hope for Israel.
Yes.
And it comes through so beautifully. Can you tell us the reason why you have chosen that gospel?
This gospel is very personal to me, because where Elizabeth says that when Mary visited her, the baby leapt in her womb. And I can relate to that because I was expecting, and then I thought I had miscarried. And a couple of weeks later, it showed that no, I had twins. I was carrying twins, and I'd lost one, but the other one was still viable. And I used to read this all the time, and I used to pray to Mary, "Please let my baby be safe. Please let me get through." And there were quite a few bumpy times, Peter, where I was at risk again and threatening to abort Olivia. So I prayed to Our Ladies and saying, "Please, let my baby leap in my womb to let me know that she's well, I didn't know it was a girl, sorry, that everything's okay." And even though Olivia was impatient, so she was born at 32 weeks, but she was born healthy. There was nothing wrong with her. And so I hold that, that Our Lady did listen to me, and she kept Olivia safe, because every time I said this prayer, especially later on, Olivia would move inside me just to, at that time, saying, hey mum, you know, I'm still here. And another time is when my older daughter was expecting her first child, and I used to visit Kate all the time, every week, every Thursday I was at Kate's place. And in the end, as soon as I opened the door and said, hi darling, it's me, and I'd actually talk to Kate's tummy and say, hello beautiful baby, you know, grandma. And Kate said to me, every time you say that to my tummy moves, the baby moves. So there's two reasons why but I've always loved that. And yeah, I was fortunate enough to have Olivia, who is now a strapping 37 today she is. 37 today. And my gorgeous granddaughter, Alyssa, is 28 and very healthy as well.
It's a beautiful story, a very personal story.
That's what I said, it is personal. And when you asked us if we would join in the chat and what gospel I would choose, Father, I didn't even consider any other one but this, because it meant so much to me. Olivia's born, and I hold it all on Mary.
Yeah, well, for me, the visitation story is when you've got this young girl who's pregnant,
yes,
and this elderly lady who's pregnant.
Yes.
I wonder what they talked about.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like motherhood in that time, holding the child in a tummy, as you say, and all the things that happen, all your hopes and dreams and all those sorts of things for the little one, there's stories there, aren't there? There's some great stories.
Definitely. There'd be many more.
Yeah.
And I've got many more. But this was very appropriate because it was beautiful. Every time I had a special prayer. I'm not going to say it because it's my prayer to Our Lady and to Mary, who I feel, I'm getting emotional, damn. Because I thought I was going to lose Olivia several times. I was hospitalised for 12 weeks to try and keep her safe. And she was. And as I said, today she's 37 and she's got bright blue hair and and 3 beautiful children of her own.
Yeah. Well done, Mum. Well done, Grandma.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. So thanks, Judy. That was a beautiful story.
Thank you, Father.
We're now going to have a little listen to your story, Lorenzo. And can you start way back? Now, you tell me you came to Australia when you were about 12 years of age. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure you have memories of when you were in Italia, up the north there. Yeah. Can you start right from the beginning?
Well, I was born in a place called Brogliano, which is at the time was a very, very small town. Didn't have walls around it, but it was old. The house I was born in was over 1,000 years old, and pretty much pocketed with bullets, holes and stuff like that through many wars. But that's another story. I went to the elementary school in my little town where there was only one teacher for all grades up to grade 5, I think it was. And after that, it was actually the parish priest that pushed my dad to send me to a college, because he thought that anything else left in Brogliano was digging rocks from the river. So I went to the college. It was at the foot of Mount Grappa. Now, if there's any Italian watching this, they'll know exactly what Mount Grappa is. It's got nothing to do with the Grappa drink. It's got a lot to do with especially the First World War. It's called, in fact, the Sacred Mountain, and there's reasons for it. The college was College Canova, built by an artist who built the temple at the bottom of the road, at the top of the road, sorry, and his museum at the bottom of the road. The college was in between on the left. Nearly 2 years of a wonderful life. And I was marked to be a priest, believe it or not. However, my dad, because of many reasons, decided to migrate to this country. It was the period where people from Italy left for all over the world because there was no work. Some to Germany, some to America, Canada. Dad picked Australia because his brother came to Australia 5 years before him, and being both cheesemakers, they thought that maybe they could build a business here. But my uncle had found another type of business, and he wrote to Dad saying there was no cows there, so forget the cheese. No cows in this country. But anyhow, he did decide to come here, and when we came here, we moved to a place that's called Bulleen, and at the time there was only about 3 houses in it. It was really desolate. But he worked at the Glenorris brick factory, where eventually I found work with a guy that was testing his particular type of work, his pricky burners, to eliminate coal from the industry and turn to oil and eventually to gas. I actually stayed with this guy for all my working life, over 53 and a half years. During that time, of course, I did things that growing boys did. When I got to 17 or 18 years old, I started driving the car around and making around with other boys on the parish. The church there wasn't a church, it was the Penguin Laundry. And on Sunday mornings, the top floor was transformed into the church. And 4 or 5 of us boys got together, and there was only 2 cars in the whole group by then, and we started going out as boys of our age do.
Can I just pull you up there? Because
Yeah.
you're telling us a bit earlier a story of your, as a child when you first came.
Yes.
And I know Bulleen because
Yes.
it's St Clement's Church there.
Yeah.
I used to go there when I was teaching at Doncaster. And just one quick story, if you got there early, that means you were the last off because all the cars would pile in behind you and you had to wait. But
That
anyway,
is
that's
true.
another Italian story.
That is true.
Yeah, but you're saying that when you came, of course, you wouldn't have had English.
No.
So, as a child of 12 years of age.
Yes. Having left a college where I was equivalent of Form 2 here, I was put in grade 3 because I couldn't speak English at all.
Yeah.
And not having really any need to draw figures with my fingers and whatever, I decided to learn English properly. So I started to really learn into the English. And so the last 2 months of 1956 was spent in grade 3. The following year I did grades 4, 5 and 6, topped the class in everything, including English. And I began grade 7 in 58, 57, 58, correct. But the parish priest and the head nun of the school, at St John's Heidelberg then, decided that I was headed for better things, shall we say. So he put me in his car, drove me to Alphington at Parade Prep, where I did a very quick test, and the head guy there said, I want this boy here. So I started Parade Prep and did that for almost 2 years. But then I decided that my mum and dad were struggling far too much with their children, and I decided to go to work.
Yeah, and in those days, when the Italians came, it wasn't easy, was it? There were a lot of difficulties.
There were difficulties because, there's racism today, but racism has always been around. It was a different type. Sometimes it was violent, but not the violence that we have today. Oh no. It was mainly bantering around with names and, just putting you down if they tried. Personally, I never had a fight, but I did have people that fought for me if they thought I was being vilified in any way, particularly calling names. So other than that, I had a probably a quiet upbringing here.
So you continued on, and I cut you short before, and so you completed your schooling at an earlier age. You didn't continue on. Would you like to take it on from there?
I stopped basically where I was left in Italy, halfway through Form 2 at Parade Prep. Because, as I said, I wanted to go to work. Dad was really against it at the beginning, but I was going to leave anyway.
Yeah.
So he found a job. Where he was working was this guy I mentioned before, testing his equipment. And he only asked me if I knew how to make a cup of tea. And I said, no. He said, good. He said, I'll teach you how to like my tea. And in the 53 years I was with him, I never made one for him.
On this journey, while you're working, you came across this gorgeous young lady.
I came across her, or rather she actually came across me. Would have been 5 or 6 years after Dad built a house in Boleyn. Her sister lived in a house 1 block away from mine. There was a vacant block in between. And I'll let her tell that part of the story if you like, because she remembers a lot more. So,
okay,
if you want.
Well, before we get to the wedding bells, Judy,
Yes.
Can you tell us your story from your childhood?
Okay, I was born in North Melbourne in 1946. I was born in North Melbourne and raised in North Melbourne. My area of freedom was actually the North Melbourne footy field in Arden Street, where my father was employed. So I spent a lot of time with the shin boners and actually lived next door to a few of them in Flemington Road and area. But I went to St Mary's, Star of the Sea, West Melbourne, which is now Simmons College. And we were taught by the Mercy nuns, and I got the waltz probably still. Because, in those days some did and some didn't. But overall my schooling was excellent. I went to Form 2, as you did. And like Lorenzo, I started work and helped Mum and Dad put my 2 younger sisters through college at St Aloysius in North Melbourne. And then my older sister got married, and from North Melbourne to Boleyn I used to catch the tram into Flinders Street and then the train to Heidelberg, and I'm in Queensland now, so let's hope there's some Victorians out there who know what I'm talking about. But it was an hour and a half travel from where I lived to my sister's home. And so that was every weekend. And Carmel had her first child, so I used to go out and babysit and what have you. There was 10 years difference between myself and my older sister. And I took notice of this skinny little boy who lived next door. And so this was when I was 13 or so, and by the time I was 14, it sounds so corny, but I fell madly in love with this skinny little Italian boy. I thought yes, and I actually said to my sister that I'm going to marry him. And she said, oh, Judith, you're only 14 years old. I said, yeah, I know. Lorenzo didn't know I existed. I was just this little kid who used to meet him at the gate. It's very funny, Father, that I could see into their backyard from Carmel's, and I think, right, Saturday morning, 9:30, Lorenzo would come out his back door, go up to the front gate to go down to the general store to get his mother's shopping. Well,
it was the only store in the area.
So, yeah, it was a general store. And so funny, Carmel needed shopping as well. So I used to time it, and I'd say buongiorno to Lorenzo, and he'd say, oh, hi, and keep walking. Because going back in North Melbourne, I lived next door to Italians. And so I grew up in North Melbourne, surrounded with Italians and everything. And so I could say buongiorno even before I met him. Long story. We both went our separate ways, and I didn't have a boyfriend or anything. I was waiting for him. And so I talked my sister in to inviting Lorenzo and his siblings to a birthday party that Carmel was having at her house. And so she did. She invited Lorenzo and his brothers and his sister over, and I made sure that I looked absolutely spectacular.
As you would.
Yes. Yeah. Method in madness. And so that was on the 3rd of October 1965.
Okay.
And the rest is history.
Okay, so that was the date of the marriage, was it?
No, that was our first date.
Oh, that's when you met.
That was
the matchmaker Carmel.
The matchmaker Carmel, yes.
So when was the wedding? And
the wedding was at St Mary's in West Melbourne. It's a glorious, like a big cathedral. It's similar to Holy Rosary, in not quite as long, but the altar and the side altars, it's more like a cathedral than a church. Yeah. And that's where the Archbishop's residence was before it went to Raheen. Mm-hmm. So Archbishop Simmons was the Archbishop there. And that's another story, Father, because he used to play basketball with us and he was the most gorgeous man. But anyway, so I got married, we got married at St Mary's on the 20th of April 1968.
1968.
52 years now.
Well, it took 3 years to get to the altar. There's good reasons for that, because
I was an Aussie.
being Italian, being Australian in those days,
No, I wasn't welcome.
Mum and Dad were dead set against it. So it took quite some time and quite some cajoling and a few words and threats of leaving home and blah blah to finally get him around.
Lots of boxes of chocolates.
But once she entered the house the first time and Mum actually met her, things just clicked.
Yeah.
And because a certain person, which won't be named,
Sure.
told certain stories to Mum and Dad, they believed her. That's another reason why she wasn't welcome.
Okay. Yeah.
But once they all met, everything clicked and things went on very, very smoothly from then on.
So you won your mother-in-law's heart?
I did.
Yes.
Our father-in-law first.
Father-in-law?
Yeah, Fulgencio.
Our father wasn't so bad. It was Mum.
He was gorgeous.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so way back then, 52 years ago.
Yes.
And you have family.
Yes.
Yes.
And you have continued on that journey. You were telling some of those stories as well. But just to go back a little bit, you both have a faith story that needs to be told as well. So I can see clearly that you are, very strong in your faith. Mm. Where did it come from, Lorenzo?
On my part, well, you didn't have much of a choice where I was born because they were all the Catholics. Yeah. There were no other denominations at all. So I lived literally across the road from the church. The parish priest there came to my grandma's house then nearly every day for coffee or something, because it was a very, very small town. It was only 300 people lived there. And for many years that I went back for, it was only 300. It exploded many years later when the migration happened from Africa, from Yugoslavia, all the things that happened. But from the very beginning, I probably had the better gift of speech from school in that. So the priest always asked me to carry on, even as a small boy, we used to have the Sunday afternoon boys, kids, what do you call it these days?
Like a
Sunday school, shall we say, after Mass. And I was asked to start reading either the Gospels or the evangelic stories used to be called in Italian, of course. And at one stage there was a guy that came from, I think was New Guinea. He was an Englishman, but he knew Italian. And he taught me how to say the Our Father, the Hail Mary and Glory Be in English. So obviously, as a little kid, I had to say them. At weddings, I'd stand up and say one of those 3 prayers in English. Why? I don't really know. I was too really young to know the reason. But they liked it, so that went on. And in the college that I was up there in Italy, as I said, I was marked to be a priest. So religion was always on top. In fact, at home here in Bagara, my brother Frank 2 or 3 years ago went to Italy and collected the first prize that was at the college that I never picked up.
Yeah.
And it's it's a mark of...
It's a certificate of excellence.
Yeah, it's a mark of the depth of the religion that I had in me and still have, always have had. It brought me through the 3 years between meeting and getting married. Got me through that a lot because, as I said, I was mucking around with a lot of other teenagers, 7 and 18-year-olds. And at one stage, when I threatened to leave home, if Mum and Dad didn't agree, the only thing that kept me going was actually the church, because the priest got involved as well. And he said to me, your Mum and Dad is still your Mum and Dad no matter what. There has to be something that has got to, stop these sort of things happening. So me keeping going to church and praying probably solved the whole problem. And that's always stayed with me, that particular era of time that, you can't just forget about God after that. He worked to keep us together in a way, by me praying for it. And that's exactly what happened. We had we've got 4 children. They all went to Mass and all the rest when they were young. Unfortunately, times change. They're still very loving people.
They've still got
they have wonderful families, very successful, I might add. But church is not part of theirs. Maybe this is another reason why we keep going, hoping that someday they'll turn around as well.
Okay, so you've travelled together in faith. So where did yours come from, Judy?
Born into an Irish Catholic family, I really didn't have a choice either. And I didn't know anything else. We were a very religious family. My faith still today is as strong, if not stronger. But as a child, and it was probably from where our house was to St Mary's, would be probably 3k. And rain, hail, sleet, snow, you walked every morning to Mass, to 6 o'clock Mass every morning. And as I got a little bit older, I started to rebel. I'm thinking, I don't want to go to Mass. I don't want to go to Mass. We go Sundays. Dad, get up. And so, that was, that's what we did. And being taught by nuns, as I said before, your faith is still there, and I became a child of Mary into that with the blue, and I was in the choir at church as well, but I saw my family struggling, and there was a lot of sickness after the war, mental illness, because aunties and uncles who served came back wounded and terrible. But you grew up, and I lived in the Keating house, but I lived in a house with both grandmothers. Mum looked after both, her mother and Dad's mum, who were bedridden and everything. And I remember, and that's why I still say the rosary, we were a rosary family, and it was every night on our knees around the fire. But Father, what gets me is Mum's mum, Grandma, and she was the most beautiful person. I can still see her with her long white hair, and Mum plaiting it or us plaiting it, you know. But the rosary beads were always in Grandma's hands. And even if I had said it, and as she got older, she'd say, old girl, she used to call me old girl, and she said, you have to hold the beads. I can't move my fingers anymore.
Yep.
So that was my job, and I was probably 9 years old, 8 or 9 years old, and that's what I did. But our family stayed together, and it wasn't easy. It really wasn't. We had ups and downs, like many families, and we weren't rich, we were far from it. But I think our faith, there was always food on the table, and we were always clean. But even though I used to moan and carry on and be dragged to church every morning, I'm glad. I am glad that I had that strong faith, because it sounds like a cliche, Father, but if you've got a strong faith, no matter what you're going through, even what we're going through today, and it's really sad. And it's sad for me because all my family are in Melbourne. I've got nobody up here except him.
And you find St. James Church.
We did.
Yes.
And you have found one of the prized places, I would
Oh, it's
suggest.
beautiful.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
The people at St. James, from the first day that we, and you were saying Mass that, and
Okay.
any visitors, so, you know,
Yeah.
like you do. I love the way you do that.
Okay.
And so we put up our hands, and we're from Victoria, you know, launching place, and travelling through, and so that was the first time.
So you are heavily involved in our church,
Yes.
in our parish, and you are still heavily involved in ministry.
Yes.
So thank you for being who you are. And if you want some more stories, please make sure you come to St. James 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning.
On a Sunday morning.
And be part of, even may have a cup of coffee afterwards. So thank you, Judy, and thank you, Lorenzo. One of our hopes and dreams here is to actually have Mass in Italian, and Father Andrew Chase from Gladstone can help us there, so we may have to swap over when we can, when this virus situation settles down, which will be really, really good. You have a prayer for us there.
Yes, I have. Compassionate and loving Father, in the face of confusion and concern, impart to us the calm of your presence, if you allow us to find hope and healing. Be with those who serve the sick and give them your caring hands. Be with those who lead and give them your spirit of wisdom. Be with those who are fallen ill and give them your comforting heart. Wrap your arms around our world and hold us in your love. Allow us at this time of trial to then serve as instruments of that love to all we meet. We ask this in your name. Amen. And if there's any Italians watching, che Dio vi benedica.
Benedizione Italiana. Thank you for that. Grazie. That's beautiful. So thank you for being with us today. Thank you for being with us today. Join us again next week in another episode of Church Chat. Keep in touch, stay well, and be gentle with each other. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.